video.
I want him to be remembered as the best father that anyone could ask for, and also at the same time being the best soldier that anyone could ask for. That's the main message.
I think he was somewhat fascinated with the military, the infantry in particular.
When Travis was at Fort Benning for basic training, we went down to see the graduation, and Travis said to me, you know, this basic training was the best time I've had in my life. Now, a lot of people don't think that about basic training, but he thought it was more fun than anything he had ever done.
When he was in the 101st, enlistment was up. They wanted him to re-up, and he said, okay, but I want to go with the 501st in Alaska, okay? And they said, there's no slots open. You can't go. He said, okay, I'm out of here. So he got out and did some civilian jobs. He went to school over in Missoula for a short period of time, and the civilian life just didn't do it for him. He had to get back in the Army. Travis knew the reality of serving in Iraq. He knew the danger.
It was always the last thing he wanted to talk about. There were, the conversations, I'm going, I gotta do my job, there's bad guys that, don't like me very much, He was very open about that.
We went to Fort Drum for the deployment ceremonies where they cased the flags, sitting in the stands and looking at the troops on the field. A parent always realizes that some of them are not going to come back.
They were searching for a soldier that had been captured. They came across 4 Iraqis who looked suspicious. Travis got out of his vehicle and was able to apprehend one of them. But when he grabbed a hold of him, he realized the guy was wearing a suicide vest. And he dropped the guy to the ground, and the Iraqi detonated the vest, and that was that.
There's always going to be a void, and we accept that.
I take anything I can and I try to turn it positive. So, I take, yes, my dad's gone, and that's hard, but, it's the fact that what he did is so extreme, and, that moves me even more. He was my icon.
He loved the Army, and he loved being with his troops. And he did the very best he could.
It means the world to me. The Medal of Honor it's the biggest one, and I can't thank everyone enough for the support and everything that they've done to give him that, because he did truly deserve it. My true treasure is what people say about him. And that's what makes me the most proud. He was a great soldier and a great father.
If you've served in any capacity in the United States military at any point in your life, can you please stand for a moment? Yeah, come on. It's because of the sacrifice of men and women just like you that we get to even celebrate in this country our independence. Yeah, I know that 4th of July, the Independence Day, is from 1776, but through the years, men and women have stepped up to the table time and time again to ensure that we remain free. So sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. One of the only regrets that I think that I'll live with for the rest of my life, and it's just the reality, is that I didn't join the military when I had the chance with my best friend, Dalton. I'll never forget the conversations we had over the course of 2 and 3 years. He always knew that he was gonna go. We were the same age. We both graduated in 2012, and we knew that the next step was to join. And I fell in love with a girl and got married instead of going to the military. But my friend Dalton, he followed through. And he always said, 4 years, I'm done. I'm gonna get my 4 years, they're gonna pay for my college, and I'm out. 12 years later, he is now still in the military at Fort Benning, Georgia. And I believe the last time that I spoke to him, he was a drill sergeant. And I remember asking him, man, why are you still in? You had every opportunity to get out. He said, man, I couldn't imagine doing anything else with my life. I understand that my wife suffers. I understand that my family suffers. I understand that I'm gone for long periods of times, but I'm willing to make the sacrifice that's necessary to continue to ensure that this country remains free. Today, as we jump into the book of Acts, as we continue this journey, we're gonna investigate 4 people or peoples or persons, really 3 people and 1 group of people, who are willing to go to extraordinary lengths, make extraordinary sacrifices for what they deem worthy. And if I'm honest with you, I've been wrestling with this week. I've been investigating my own heart and my own life. Where am I willing to make sacrifices for what's necessary? Even just yesterday, I was having a conversation with Pastor Andrew, and we were talking about just certain things that we're doing, and I was like, man, I'm gonna do this, this, and this, and it's gonna cost me some time, it's gonna cost me some energy, but I see the finish line, and it's worth the sacrifice. So reality is there's things in all of our lives that we're willing to do for what we deem necessary. And we like to think about the big grand things. I know people in here right now that are police officers. You put your lives on the line every week. I know some of us that have gone through things, that have given up certain things in order to see our family succeed. But what about the little things? Can I just be fully transparent with you guys? Yesterday, as I'm walking into Walmart, I called my wife, Rachel. She's like, hey, what'd you need? I was like, I didn't really need anything. There was, you know what I don't like? It's the people that stand outside and try to sell you something. So a couple months ago, I was convicted because every time I saw that, I would pick up my phone and pretend like I was on the phone. Yeah, hey, guy, So the Lord convicted my heart and said, you're a liar. Okay, so then I was like, okay, now I'm gonna start calling my wife. I'll go to extraordinary lengths like that for the sake of my own comfort. I can't believe, Rachel told me not to tell you guys this. I'm gonna tell you guys this, okay? Don't judge me. If I know, this is bad, okay. If I know that I'm about to get into a conversation with somebody that tends to, can't take social cues, doesn't know when to cut off, I'll text my wife and say, call me in 5 minutes. So if I'm ever talking to you and my wife calls, no, I'm just kidding. This is a joke. She said, you can't tell them that because what if you need to use it again? I was like, they'll know, they'll get the cue. But the reality is we're all willing to do certain things, sacrifice certain things for what we deem worthy, whether that's great big things or whether that's for the sake of our comfort. And so let's turn together to the New Testament book of Acts, Acts 23. At this time, some ushers are coming around. If you need a Bible, please raise your hand. We would love to put a Bible in your hand. There's nothing better than the physical word of God in your hands. We're going to be in Acts 23, looking at verses 12 through 35 today. We're on the heels of several instances where Paul is brought before certain leaders, and he has just been brought before the high council, and they're questioning him. They're asking him, why are you doing this? Why do you think this way? And last week we learned about Paul talking to them about his hope in the resurrection. And we see the division between the Sadducees and the Pharisees, and the Sadducees don't believe in the resurrection of the dead. And what's crazy is Sadducees obviously hate Christians. But I was reading this week and I realized that they might hate Pharisees more than they hate Christians. So now they don't only hate Paul because he's a Christ follower, he's a follower of the way, but he also says, I'm a Pharisee of Pharisees. That's another reason for them to hate him. And at the very end, the Lord comes to Paul and gives him this great encouragement. I just want to read that before we jump in. On verse 11, it says, that night the Lord appeared to Paul and said, be encouraged, Paul, just as you have been a witness to me here in Jerusalem, you must preach the good news in Rome as well. Paul is strengthened and encouraged in the midst of, he's been beaten, he's been spit upon, he's been slapped in the face, he's been falsely accused, but the Lord comes and encourages him. But as we're gonna see today, sometimes on the heels of our greatest encouragement is when the attacker comes. Let's pray before we jump in. God, I thank you for your word. I thank you that it's active and alive. Father, I pray now that as we investigate the scriptures together, God, that we wouldn't walk out of here with man's opinion or some fancy words, but God, that your spirit would speak in and through me to us today, that our hearts would be open and ready for all that you have for us. I pray that we be challenged, strengthened, and encouraged today. God, everything we do is for you and for your glory. Amen. Amen. Well, let's jump right in. Starting in verse 12, we're going to look at the first person or persons, group of people that are willing to go through great lengths for what they deem worthy. Verse 12, the next morning, a group of Jews got together and bound themselves with an oath not to eat or drink until they had killed Paul. There were more than 40 of them in the conspiracy. They went to the leading priests and elders and told them, we have bound ourselves with an oath to eat nothing until we have killed Paul. Now, in certain commentaries, they would talk about there was this belief amongst the Jews that if there was a blasphemer or an apostate among them that had gone through the trial and gone through the tribulation, and they didn't really think that the outcome was what it should be, they would take matters into their own hands. They actually felt like they had the legal, moral, and spiritual right to take matters into their own hands. So these Jews, and it is safe to assume that these were probably Sadducees. They were the ones that were most stirred up by Paul's conversation just a few verses earlier. They said, we're gonna take matters into our own hands. So they're willing to starve themselves, possibly die. They're willing to conspire. They're willing to lie. They're willing to scheme in order to accomplish the cause that they deem worthy. They don't think that the Romans are taking it seriously. The high council must not be taking it seriously because he should be dead. He's a blasphemer. So they said, you know what? I got this. I'm going to take matters into my own hands. So they bound themselves with an oath not to eat or drink until, you know how mad you got to be at somebody? I've never been that mad. I've been mad before, but I like to eat. I'm still going to eat my food. Like, Rick, you might make me mad, but bro, I'm going to eat lunch today. It's okay. I'll get over it, right? They were serious. And when it said the conspiracy, it's not like conspiracy like we hear today. Like, it was a scheme. It was a plot. They had decided amongst themselves, we are going to do this. Verse 15, it continues. So you and the high council should ask the commander to bring Paul back to the council again. Pretend you want to examine his case more fully. We will kill him on the way. Bring him back and lie about it. Don't worry, council. We got this. We're willing to do whatever it takes to accomplish our cause. We're willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that this man, this liar, is dead. And we know this about the Apostle Paul is this isn't new to him. This is something that has been happening over the course of his life. He's been stoned half to death. In fact, they thought that they killed him, and he got up the next day and went right back in. He's been falsely accused over and over and over again. Now imagine the Lord has just come and said, hey, in the same way that you were a witness here, you're gonna go and do it in Jerusalem. And now you've got to deal with a plot on your life? If that was me, okay, God, like, thanks for the strength and encouragement last night, but what the heck? Like, what's going on? I work for God. I'm doing your will. Shouldn't everything in my life be going well? Anybody else can attest to that? Like I go to church, I read my Bible, like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Why are these bad things still happening to me? But what we also learn about Paul is that's not the posture of his heart. Verse 16, the second person that's willing to go to great lengths for a cause that he deems worthy. But Paul's nephew, his sister's son, heard of their plan and went to the fortress and told Paul. Paul called for one of the Roman officers and said, "Take this young man to the commander. He has something important to tell him." So the officer did, explaining, "Paul the prisoner called me over and asked me to bring this young man to you because he has something to tell you." You see, Paul's nephew, for the sake of his uncle's life, is willing to put his reputation on the line, willing to put even his own life on the line. Because I would imagine if these Jews or these Sadducees found out who snitched, they're going to get him too. Snitches get and end up in, why do you guys know that? I try to tell my daughter that. Charlie, don't listen to that. My wife gets mad at me when I tell her that. Charlie's a snitch. No. Paul's nephew puts his life on the line, puts his reputation on the line for the sake of his uncle. He's willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that his uncle is safe. And some might argue like he's worried about the cause of Christ. And there's probably a little bit like he understands and has seen what Paul has accomplished in his life, and he wants to make sure that continues. But selfishly, it's more about his uncle and his mom's brother than it is about that. He's willing to go through great lengths to even be found out as a snitch. Verse 19, the commander took his hand, led him aside, and asked, "What is it you want to tell me?" In verse 20, Paul's nephew told him, "Some Jews are going to ask you to bring Paul here before the high council tomorrow, pretending they want to get some more information. But don't do it. There are more than 40 men hiding along the way, ready to ambush him. They have vowed not to eat or drink anything until they have killed him. They are ready now, just waiting for your consent." He basically tells him, don't be a part of this. Don't agree to this. Don't let Paul's blood be on your hands. Please stop this. Please do whatever it takes, whatever you got to do to make sure that this doesn't happen. Verse 22, it continues. "Don't let anyone know you told me this," the commander warned the young man. Then the commander sent 2 of his officers and ordered, "Get 200 soldiers ready to leave for Caesarea at 9 o'clock tonight. Also take 200 spearsmen and 70 mounted troops. Provide horses for Paul to ride and get him safely to Governor Felix." 40 men are waiting to ambush Paul. 270 men are ordered to protect him. It seems a little excessive, does it not? It seems a little like, why would you go to those great lengths to protect this man? Well, a couple things. This commander, who we'll learn in a second is named Claudius, understands that Paul is a Roman citizen. Therefore, as a Roman citizen, there is proper trial that needs to take place in order for a judgment to be handed down. So, if something were to happen to Paul under his watch, he might be held liable for that. So he's like, not on my watch. And you might read this and say, man, he really cares about Paul. He cares for him in the sense that he's a Roman citizen, but more than that, he cares more selfishly about his own position, about his own authority, and his own power. Because again, if something were to happen to Paul on his watch, he would be held responsible. He's like, not today. You're not going to do anything to this man under my watch. I'm going to make sure of it because I enjoy this position that I have, and I want to make sure that nothing illegal happens. Because at this point, the Romans really hadn't done anything about it. The Romans kept kind of pushing it off because in the same way that when Jesus was brought before Pilate, what do you have with this man? It seems that your beef with him is because of your religious law. And so in this time, if it had to do anything with religious law, 9 times out of 10, they would put it back to the Jews. So in a lot of ways, the Romans like, why do you keep bringing this guy to us? Like, take care of your own business. But then they find out that he's a Roman citizen and understand that they got to take this matter seriously. Let's read it again, verse 23. It says, then the commander called his 2 officers and ordered, get 200 soldiers ready to leave for Caesarea at 9 o'clock tonight. I love that. Even in the the dark of night. Like, he was not going to take any chances. We're not going to let this happen in broad daylight. Like, this isn't 2023 where you're going to see the high beams or they're hiding with flashlights. Like, if it's nighttime, they ain't going to see you. So get going. Take 200 spearmen, 70 mounted troops, provide horses for Paul to ride, and get him safely to Governor Felix. Then he wrote this letter to the governor. From Claudius Lysias to his excellency, Governor Felix. Greetings. This man was seized by some Jews, and they were about to kill him when I arrived with the troops. When I learned that he was a Roman citizen, I removed him to safety. Then I took him to their high council to try to learn the basis of the accusations against him. I soon discovered the charge was something regarding their religious law. Certainly nothing worthy of imprisonment or death, as they were calling for. Verse 30, but when I was informed of a plot to kill him, I immediately sent him to you. I have told his accusers to bring their charges before you. In a lot of ways, this was a formality, but I can't help but wonder if this was just another way to cover himself. In case something did happen, hopefully the letter got there and he said, listen, I tried my best to get him to you. I did what I was supposed to do to make sure that nothing happened to this man. Verse 31, so that night, as ordered, the soldiers took Paul as far as Antipatris. They returned to the fortress the next morning while the mounted troops took him on to Caesarea. When they arrived in Caesarea, they presented Paul and the letter to Governor Felix. He read it and then asked Paul what province he was from. Cilicia, Paul answered. I will hear my case yourself when your accusers arrive, the governor told him. Then the governor ordered him kept in the prison at Herod's headquarters. The fourth person is Paul. Like I spoke about just a few moments ago, Paul has gone through a lot up until this point in his life. He's taken 2.5 missionary journeys, and what we'll find out is that he's on his last one where he'll end up in prison in Rome for a cause that he deemed worthy. Paul gave up a lot to make sure that the gospel was advanced. We now know that Paul's got a sister. Paul's got family that he leaves behind to make sure that the gospel is advanced. Paul leaves his safety behind to make sure that the gospel is advanced. Time and time again, Paul is falsely accused, imprisoned, stoned, beaten, yet time and time again, Paul deems the cause of Christ worthy of the sacrifice that it takes to get there. And as I've been wrestling with this week, I like to think in my own heart and mind that I would do whatever's necessary for the cause of Christ. Now, I get it, in the country that we live in, there's not a whole lot of persecution that we face. Not like our brothers and sisters do in other countries around the world. But I like to think that if my life was on the line, if they came to me and you said, you better stop preaching about that man Jesus or else I'm going to kill you, I like to think that I'd be like, yes, bring it on. But can I be really, really honest with you guys? I live a life that's conditioned for comfort. Everything that is invented and created in society today is, generally speaking, for your and my comfort. We live a life that's all about convenience and comfort. Now, I'm not here to bash the convenience and the comfort, but what I am asking is for you to examine your own life in the same way that I've really had to take a hard look at mine and ask the question, am I more concerned about my convenience and my comfort than I am the cause of Christ? What lengths are you willing to go to make sure that you stay comfortable? What amount of money are you willing to spend to make sure that you stay comfortable? And if I'm really, really honest, inherently, I'm a pretty selfish guy. I want to do what I want to do. I want to go where I want to go. And there's times where my kids will ask me to do something and I'm comfortable. Not right now, leave daddy alone. Is that too honest for you guys? My wife will ask me to do something. I'll get to it. Because it's all about me. It's all about my comfort. It's all about what I want. And I make sacrifices for the things that I deem necessary. I mean, I love my wife. I love my kids. I would do anything for them. But if I'm really honest, more often than not, I'm doing things for my own comfort. I'm willing to make sacrifices to do what I want to do. Well, man, I really want to go play golf. Well, I'll make sure that we cut back on certain expenses so that I can go play golf. And there's nothing wrong with playing golf. There's nothing wrong with those hobbies and those interests. But am I sacrificing the wrong things to ensure that my comfort is satisfied? Am I giving up the wrong things to make sure that I'm comfortable? And I'm not even talking about things that are inherently sinful. How often do you find yourself just mindlessly scrolling on your phone? Just watching shows that, I mean, it's not that the show is inherently wrong, but what am I giving up in order to make sure that I'm comfortable so I can do this? Jennifer says it all the time. Man, do you know how much studying I could have done? And I find myself in this balance between, well, I don't want to be legalistic, but I also want to live a carefree life. And she said, whatever, let me just do whatever I want to do whenever I want to do it. I'm not necessarily living inherently in sin, but I'm sacrificing the things that are more important for the sake of my own comfort. Just this week, I had a conversation with a friend of mine. We were talking about habits and certain things, and they just opened up about a nicotine addiction. And I was, is it good for you? No. Is it inherently sinful? Well, I don't think so. I don't. But what are you sacrificing for your own comfort? And so we just started to talk about money. Well, if you look over the course of a month, how much does that cost you? Puts into perspective, what could you have done with those funds? What barriers could you have broken down if you gave up that habit? For me, I'm gonna sound like you. For me, Russell Siemer, he always says, for me, Andrew Anderson. For me, I choose actively not to partake in alcohol. Do I think that the Bible's clear about alcohol? Yeah, don't be drunk. And growing up, they always taught me, well, Jesus drank grape juice. I'm like, no, you're an idiot. Like, he did not. In fact, Jesus turned water into the good stuff. But the Bible's clear over and over again. Don't be drunk, don't get drunk, don't get drunk. I choose to abstain from it because my wife asked me to. Now, because I love my wife and I want to honor her and I want to honor our kids, I choose not to do that. But I also recognize for me, for Russell Siemer, for me, the amount of people that I had potentially over my life led astray while enjoying what I would call a Christian liberty. And so I felt compelled for God compelled me to, would you lay that thing down? Not inherently sinful, but he asked me, would you sacrifice that for something that's better than that? What does Paul say? All things are permissible and not everything's beneficial. So what I don't want you to hear today is like, well, I shouldn't do this. No, I'm just asking you, would you examine your own heart this morning? Would you examine your own life? And make it simple. God, what in my life could you potentially be asking me to sacrifice for the cause of Christ? What areas of my life have I become comfortable that you're asking me to maybe lay down that comfort so I can do more for the cause of Christ? I feel uncomfortable when I meet new people. My new neighbors, and I call them new, and they've lived there for a year and a half now. And for a year and a half, I fought day after day. I should probably go, just, what do I do? Show up now with a pie? Welcome to the neighborhood, a year and a half late. I don't know, but I know I just need to be neighborly, and because my hope is that I would be able to learn more about them, maybe hang out with them, maybe get into a conversation about faith, and hopefully get to the point where I've shared my faith and give them an opportunity to respond. Maybe give them an opportunity to find a church home. But my own comfort, this is inconvenient. I'm busy. I got somewhere to go. I got things to do. I can't spend 5 minutes introducing myself. I can't spend 30 seconds saying, hi, neighbor. So when I look at the group, the Jews, who are willing to potentially lose their life for the sake of what they thought was worthy. And I look at Paul's nephew, who's willing to put his own reputation and his life on the line for what he thought worthy. When I think about the commander who was willing to put the lives of his men on the line for what he thought worthy, and when I think about Paul, who over and over again puts his life on the line for the cause he deems worthy, it causes me to stop, pause, and reflect. When I think about the brave men and women who gave it all, who laid down their lives, their comforts, and I can't even get off the couch for 5 minutes to go talk, I'm not saying there's stuff that's inherently wrong with what we're doing. It's just to reframe how you're looking at it. What more could I be accomplishing for the cause of Christ if I were to lay this down, if I were to give up this comfort, if I were to set this aside, or if I were to maybe get up a few minutes early in the morning, or I don't know what that might be for you. So that's really all my challenge is for you today, is that you would take a moment to pause and reflect and ask, God, is there anything in my life? Now, if it's sin, stop it. If there's something between you and God that's sin, lay it down, give it up, stop it. But for the stuff that might fall into more of a gray area, could I do it? Sure. Should I? I mean, that's a different conversation, right? If there's anything in your life that's creating a barrier between you and other people, where it comes to a conversation about Jesus, would you just pray about it? I've had to pray about a lot of things this week. And it was hard because God revealed in my own life and my own heart where I've been selfish. Where when I want to do something, I'll do whatever it takes to make sure it gets done. But if it's not something that I want, or take it or leave it. And my hope in coming up here today is not to offend you, not to he's preaching at me today. My hope is that the Holy Spirit is doing work on your heart, where you just say, God, I'm open. Is there anything? And I'm telling you, there's things that on the surface seem good, but when you really begin to investigate, God, is this really worth it? Is this worth my time? Is this worth my energy? Is this worth my efforts? And I would ask, would you lay that down before God and say, God, I give this to you? Or God, would you help me reframe how I can use this for your good? I know that my neighbor likes to golf. I see him out there in the yard swinging. He's a real short guy. He's like Joey, so I can't really see his head, but I see the club. See the club. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not a good golfer, but now I could reframe a hobby that I like to do by myself and use it as an opportunity to minister to somebody else. It's all about just changing your perspective. Because in the same way that Jesus loved you and laid down his life for you, there is a cost to following Jesus. There are things that he might ask you to give up in pursuit of him, and that's We just got to count the cost and know that it's worth it, that he's worth it. He's worth the effort. He's worth the energy. He's worth the time. He's worth the money, whatever it takes. Steve didn't know. Some of us have the ability to buy some backpacks, buy some shoes, buy some school supplies. But we might have to give up something that we wanted to do for the sake of someone else. Just reframe. Do I want to see somebody's life change, or do I want to? I can't make that decision for you. That's between you and God. So the worship team's going to come out, and we're going to close an intentional song of worship. One of my all-time favorite worship songs, where it's a moment to recenter. So this is my invitation to you right now. Whether you stand, whether you sit, just take a few moments, you and God. Just begin to ask, God, would you search my heart? Would you search my motivations? Would you search my actions? Is there anything that could potentially be getting between you and I? Or is there anything that is taking time, energy, and effort away from what I could be doing for you? And just keep this in mind. It's not about doing more. It's not about, I got to do more for God. It's about living out the call that he's given you. And there is action to that call. We know that faith without works is dead. So it's not that the works are saving you. It's a byproduct of your salvation. There's things that we go do. There's things that we give up. There's people that we pursue. So would you wrestle with God this morning? This past Monday in our staff devotion, we were just going around sharing about things that we're dealing with in our own personal life. And I don't remember who it was. I don't remember if it was Glenn or it might have been Shannon saying, I'm just wrestling with God. Or maybe it was Jeannie, just wrestling with God. I think it was Pastor Andrew that said, well, you know what happened to, was it Jacob? You know what happened to Jacob after he wrestled with God? Better stop wrestling with him. Don't wrestle long. He'll win. But live in that tension for a little bit and say, God, what is it? And then ask him, God, would you help me lay this down for the cause of Christ, for the cause of the gospel? Would you help me give this up for you? Would you help me maybe reframe this and use it in a way that benefits others, not just myself? Father, I thank you again for your word. I thank you for how in my own heart, in my own life, you've challenged me this week. God, I pray for my friends and my family this morning that they would intentionally seek you over these next few moments and even these next few days or weeks, and begin to investigate in their own hearts and their own lives what it is that you might potentially be asking them to reframe or to lay down to be closer to you, or to draw others closer to you, or to begin fully walking in surrender to you. God, I know how hard it can be to give up things, habits, things that we've done our whole lives, but God, I know that you are stronger. And by your strength, we can make it to the other side. God, I pray that we would be reminded this 4th of July season of the sacrifice that was made so that we can live in a free country, that we would be reminded what an example, Christ, of your sacrifice. You laid down your life for our salvation, for our freedom. In the same way that people have laid down their lives for us, would we lay down our lives for you, Jesus? God, I love you. Thank you.